Welcome to Dental Business RX. Practice success in 30 minutes or less.
Thank you for calling ABC Dental.
If you've listened to the podcast for any length of time, you know that we're not big fans of managed care, PPOs, HMOs, or really anything that reduces your fees or level of reimbursement in your practice. And while we may have mentioned in some of these prior episodes ideas on what to do to get out, I realized we'd never actually laid out a sequence or a series of steps if you really wanted to drop a plan, or all of your plans for that matter, and create a fee-for-service office. And that's what we want to talk about in this week's episode of Dental Business RX. We're going to be covering the 12 steps to going out of network and creating a fee-for-service office. I'm joined in this week's episode by Sabri Blumberg. If you listened last week, you heard her there as we were going over the recession-proof checklist. Sabri is our Deputy Chief Operating Officer here at MGE. She's actually our Senior Technical Supervisor. She's in charge of all of MGE's technical delivery, and she's worked with a lot of clients, as have I, on how to exit networks and create a fee-for-service office. I think we have you hooked up over there, Sabri?
Yep, I'm all set.
Okay, good. So we want to just jump right into this. We have a lot to cover in this episode.
Yep.
We've got our 12 steps, and I wanted to add a couple of qualifiers you and I were discussing ahead of time. We want to make this quick because, it's like watching one of those videos where they teach you how to make bread and then you spend 10 minutes on the theory of bread. We're not going to do that this time. I hate those. Yeah. Anyway, so two major qualifiers you and I were talking about before the episode began. One was this is primarily targeted to getting out of PPOs.
Yeah.
It's a whole different strategy. Not completely different, but there are different steps if you want to get out of HMOs and Medicaid.
Yeah, it's not any more difficult. It's just different.
Right. So if you have situations where, or not really a situation where you're in HMOs or a lot of HMOs, you're in Medicaid and you do want to exit, we can help you with that. It's just not exactly what we're covering this week. This is more targeted at PPOs.
Yeah.
And if you want help with that, you can always contact us for a coaching session, a free coaching session. If you go to our website, mgeonline.com, you click, I would like a free practice consultation, mention that you're looking for an exit strategy for HMOs and Medicaid, and we can help you with it.
That's right.
Okay, good. So that's the first thing. Second thing is dropping PPOs. There is no one size fits all.
Right.
Right. It's someone might have 70 or 80% or 100% of their practice is PPO.
Right.
Someone else may have 5% and they could just drop it and it's not a big deal.
Right. And it's also modified by where they're located, the type of practice that they have, the type of dentistry that they like doing. It's modified by different things.
So in a lot of cases, it's an individualized strategy.
Yeah. So, well, you take these 12 steps and you would modify them for that particular situation.
Exactly. So if you want individualized help, which we're going to offer you a couple times through the episode, we do have a what we're calling our PPO exit strategy session. I'm putting a link to it on the episode webpage if you'd like to register for that. It is free. That session would be most likely with you, Sabri, right?
Yeah.
Sabri or Chris Mankhouse, one of our he's our director of practical implementation.
Yeah.
You guys are super specialists in this area. We're offering it to people in the profession. We'll go through what's happening in your office as well as what you should do to remedy it.
Exactly.
Yeah. And we'll mention that a couple times as we go through. Okay, good. So I say we just jump right into the steps, right?
Yep.
Okay, so we noted all these down.
Yep.
So do you want me to read the steps? I'll read the steps and we'll talk about them. Okay, good. And that's sort of how we're going to do this, folks. We're just going to read it, discuss it, because we've both done this a lot. Just to give you an idea of how to apply these different steps. All right, so step one. And this is really something, you don't have to do it beforehand, but you would do it sort of concurrently while you're doing all this. If you're going to drop plans, you want to also make sure that your new patient acquisition strategy is in place.
That's right. And you want to make sure that that part of your practice is not a problem. You got that under control. You know what kind of marketing you're going to be doing. Your receptionist is trained on how to handle new patient phone calls so that these phone calls actually convert into new patients, meaning they show up in your office, right? You make sure your referral programs are in place and are producing, right? So really all your strategies need to be producing so that you can crank them up or dial them back at will, depending on how many new patients your practice needs.
Well, I think there's 2 points that come to this as well or contribute to this concept as well. One is that if you're going to be, because potentially when you drop plans,
Yes.
you could lose patients.
Yes.
And I think we estimate that usually it's between 28 and 32%, which is really 30% is the high end. We've seen a lot of our clients lose far less than that.
That's correct.
And I guess I should probably mention this here as well. In a lot of cases, if you take a look at the level of write-off on the plan, if you were to lose 30% of the patients in that plan and still only see 70% at full fee, you actually lose zero productivity. In a lot of cases, you gain productivity and you increase profitability while reducing material cost and labor costs.
That's right. And go ahead.
So I was going to say, so it's not as scary as people think. People,
No.
like you said something earlier, which I thought was great, which is it's actually easier to get out of a plan than to stay in.
That's right.
In the long run.
That's right.
Much less of a headache.
But I think that because in the dental profession it's so accepted to be in PPOs, dentists get the idea that you can't survive without PPOs, and that's just a lie.
Right.
As a matter of fact, you survive far worse with a PPO or in managed care than you ever do fee for service.
Right.
Right. So, and it's not just possible, it's the way to practice.
Well, and you see it, and not to digress too hard, but if you remember back in, I'm dating myself here, back in 1992, when HMOs were really grabbing a really strong presence in the dental profession.
That's right.
I was talking to doctors back then who were signing up for as many HMOs as they could.
That's right.
Because they thought, if they don't get in the HMO, they're locked out.
That's right. They thought if they don't get in now, they won't have any patients.
Yeah, because everybody's going to be in an HMO.
That's right.
Well, that was 30 years ago, folks. Exactly 30 years ago, and we see how that worked out.
That's
so
right.
it's done in an effort. The way it's positioned is it's done in an effort to scare you into staying in. It is easier to get out than to stay in. So we have step one: get that new patient strategy in. Right.
Yeah.
And one other thing I'd mention with this too on this new patient strategy, because I have people ask me this when we do this.
Yeah.
Get more new patients first. They go, well, why would I want to get more new patients if some of those are in a PPO?
Yeah.
Well, if I have 100 people and I'm going to lose potentially 30, that leaves me with 70. If I have 1,000 and I lose potentially 30%, I have 700.
Yeah.
So the safety here is in numbers.
That's right.
Yes.
Always.
So that's not something you don't wait till you're getting a ton of new patients before you do this, but you want to make sure that this is done concurrently while you're doing anything with relation to PPOs.
Right.
And if you want help with that as well, we do have the MGE New Patient Workshop. I'll put a link to the New Patient Workshop if you want to learn more on the episode webpage.
That's right.
Cool? Yeah, lots of links.
Right.
Yeah, there you go. All right,
well, because there's lots of different pieces to this.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, so step two. We have the first thing, I've decided I'm dropping my PPOs.
Yes.
Step two, I'm going to calculate the size of my patient base.
That's right.
Okay, so now what formula would you use for something like that?
What I would do is I would take the last 24 months and I would take 80% of that. And that would be really the patient base that I'm thinking with. So if I have 1,000 patients that I've seen in the last 24 months, then I'm going to take 80% of that, which is 800 patients. And that's what I'm looking at as my patient base.
Okay, so now just as a qualifier on this, because we've talked about, going back 5 years to reactivate patients and things like this.
Yeah.
The reason why we're saying 2 years, which is kind of the industry standard on quote unquote active patients,
right?
Which really is a complete arbitrary decision.
It really is.
The reason we're doing this is we're building our building here with a factor of safety.
That's right.
If we say, okay, only the people we've seen in the last 24 months rather than people we've seen in the last few years, we're going to get a smaller number.
That's right.
So we're going to be a little bit more conservative about our resources at that point.
That's right. Because the size of your patient base, when you determines really how much money you're going to be making in repeat sales from those patients. So when you're dropping patients that are going out of network or that won't stay with you. And I do want to say one thing about this. I know I'm kind of going off, right? There was a survey that was done a few years ago on what was important to patients when picking a dentist.
Okay.
Right? And 30% cost was a factor. 70% had nothing to do with cost. It was the skill level, the communication level of the dentist, the customer experience. Care. And that's why you will retain at least 70% of your patients.
Yeah, I remember that survey.
Yeah.
And I remember we kind of always thought that.
Yeah.
And we'd sort of drilled that concept in with our clients.
That's right.
But then seeing it validated, and it was just a huge cross-section of the populace.
That's
it wasn't
right.
just people in one specific enclave of society or something. This
Right,
was
or just a few people.
Right.
This was a large survey that was
people
done.
from all walks of life.
That's right.
Yeah,
right.
so only 30% cost was the issue.
That's right.
Yeah.
So that's why you can pretty much bank on retaining 70% of your patient base. But you want to take a look at how much is 70% of my patient base.
Right.
You want to have just kind of a conservative approach when you do these numbers. So when you have 500 patients and you're trying to produce 100,000 a month,
That's
right?
going to be rough.
That's going to be rough if you lose 30% of those 500 patients. You have 350 patients left.
Right.
So the how aggressively you sequence your dropping of patients or of PPOs.
plans, rather, yeah.
Sorry, not patients, PPOs. Right? How aggressively you sequence this, because usually you wouldn't do this overnight.
Right.
This would be something that you would take a few months, sometimes even a year to accomplish.
Well, and again, that's why we say it's individualized.
Correct.
Some people may have 100% of their practice PPO, and some it's not that much.
Correct.
So, yeah.
So how aggressively you would sequence this or how much time you would take is completely dependent on how many patients you have.
Right.
If you have far more patients that you can ever hope to see, if you actually do some reactivation, right? Yeah, drop them to your heart's content. You have more patients than you need.
Which a lot of people do.
Yeah, actually the
4,000
majority of
patients have been there the last 2 years. I mean, they're not seeing them regularly, but they've been in there in the last 2 years.
That's exactly right.
So that's your basic calculation then. You would take the last 2 years of unique patient visits.
Correct.
Not total patient visits, but unique people that have been in the practice in the last 2 years. That's my number. And I'm going to, if I'm looking for a number to operate with, I'm going to say 80% of those.
That's correct.
Okay.
Just to make sure that your patient base is still somewhat robust to feed your hygiene and to feed your sales.
Got it. Okay, good.
Right? That's all.
All right. So now that's step 2.
Yeah.
Right? Calculate the size of my patient base. Step 3, I'm going to want to make a list, or you're going to want to make a list,
Yes.
right, of all the plans in your practice, every single plan, and figure out how many of these patients are in each.
Correct. And you just want to do this for your active patients,
Yeah, for
right?
the
So
last
you're
2
just
years.
working on the last 2 years.
So yeah, that 20% number we aren't calculating in here yet necessarily. We're using that just to get the idea of how many patients we quote unquote have.
Yes.
But if I'm cranking out a list of, here's the list of the 2,000 people we've seen in the last year, I now want to break those down by carrier,
That's correct.
or by plan rather, by plan.
That's right.
Okay, so now I have this many in this plan, this many in that plan, and so on, right?
That's right.
Okay, so now I've done that.
Right.
I then want to now I'm going to start looking at fees and write-offs.
That's correct.
So now I look, I have 200 of let's say I have 2,000 patients
Yeah.
in the last 2 years. I've got 200 of those
Yeah.
are in Acme Insurance Plan.
Yeah.
Okay. So now I'm going to take Acme Insurance Plan's fee schedule and my fee schedule. Now, am I going to go nuts with this? Like, I'm going to look at every CDT code?
No, I usually just take one procedure, like a crown
Or maybe like crown, a molar endo, and a cleaning or something like that?
something like that.
Okay.
Like you just take a couple of things that you do a lot of, and you take a look at what your write-off is on that.
Okay, so I'm going to kind of calculate my average write-off.
Correct.
We have a spreadsheet that does this.
Yes.
The problem, it's a great spreadsheet.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. It's a little bit complex. We were having people download it for a while, and then we'd follow up like, "Hey, you got the spreadsheet? Like, I don't know what to do with it." I made a video for it. It's admittedly a bit complex, and it's asking you for a lot of data.
Right.
We usually use it when we're talking to somebody,
Right.
and getting you to give us the numbers,
Right.
Right. But essentially, what we're trying to find out when we're doing this step is what's the worst. What is our write-off level in each, right?
Correct. You're not doing it to get the data to your accountant, right? So you have to keep in mind, why are we doing this? You're trying to get an idea on how to sequence the dropping of your plants, right? So you're trying to get an idea on which ones do I have horrible write-offs, and I'm going to weigh it against the amount of patients I have.
Right. I just realized whenever you say to somebody, you have to get some stuff together for your accountant, it just immediately depresses them.
I know.
I just immediately felt, I don't have to get anything to our accountant. And I just felt bad.
As soon as I said it,
Yeah,
you got
exactly.
depressed.
We're not asking you to give anything. She said you don't have to give it to your accountant.
No.
Yes.
No. So you keep
Sorry.
in mind why you're doing
You lost
this.
me at that point. I was just
Right.
sitting here being
Right.
bummed.
So you
All
just
right.
need enough data so you can sequence it
So
properly
I can
or
look
have
at-
an idea of sequencing.
So I can look at, okay, well, Acme plan, I'm writing off roughly 30%.
Right.
And, beta plan, I'm writing off 20%.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then next to that, you also have the data on how many patients do I have in that particular
You could
plan.
even make a little spreadsheet or do it on a piece of paper.
Yes.
Right? Here's Acme plan. I have 300 patients. My average write-off is 30%.
Yeah.
And then I have, beta plan. I have 200 patients and my write-off is 20%.
That's right. And
Is there a plan that
honestly,
starts with a D?
I don't think there are any big ones that start with a D. Maybe Delta?
There's Alpha.
maybe?
Yeah.
No.
It rhymes
would
with
just-
Delta. Rhymes with Delta. That's what we say. Like
Okay,
it
okay.
rhymes with Cigna.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, good. All right. So
Anyway, and just to speak to your point, often when I sit down with a client and we're doing this, we're just writing it on a piece of paper.
yeah, don't knock yourselves out on this, guys. Make
No.
it real simple, but obviously be able to read it later.
That's right. But we're not doing any crazy Excel spreadsheets or anything like that
right.
for this.
Right.
Right.
All right. And again, this was kind of a point between me and you as we were structuring this episode, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to kind of give it to you in a way where if you want to go, just, go big or go home, you can do it. If you want to be really conservative about this because, you're worried or whatever, we're also going to give you a way to handle this,
That's right.
So we're up to this point where we've reviewed our fee schedules. We know how many patients we have in each plan and, how much we're writing off roughly.
That's right.
Right. So our next step we have here on our checklist is we now want to review the contracts.
That's right. And
Right.
you actually have to read the contracts because they're all different.
Well, and specifically, the most important part of the contracts we want to read
Yeah.
are what are our obligations. Obviously, we're not giving you legal advice. You can
No.
also pay your attorney to review your contracts
right.
and tell you. That's why you have attorneys, right? But we're really looking at what are our legal obligations here. And we want to also look at what's the procedure for dropping them. Like you were mentioning earlier that there's some that take up to a year now.
That's right. So some take up to a year to drop. Some of them require written notice and confirmation. Some don't. Right. So what I have had happen is clients call to drop the insurance and then, they gave them like their 60 days notice, for example. And then the 60 days are up and the insurance company then says, no, you're not out because we require it in writing.
Oh, wow.
Right. And
So, of
someti-
course, when they called, it was verbally confirmed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But interestingly enough, right, insurance companies are not always aware of the contract that they have with you.
Okay.
So sometimes they tell you that you need to put it in writing, but it's not in your contract. So you don't actually have to do that.
I see.
And that's why you want to be aware of what your contract is. And therefore, if you have any questions about it, to have an attorney stand by is always a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, most likely, depending on how many contracts you have.
Yeah.
If I've got like 4,
Yeah.
I could probably look them over.
Yeah.
If I'm worried about this becoming a problem, I'd probably just send them to the attorney.
Yeah,
It's not going to take
absolutely.
the attorney long. You just say, look, how do I get out of this thing? And they'll tell you, well, you're going to have to do this and this and that and whatever.
That's exactly right.
Not a big deal.
That's
All right.
exactly
So
right.
then I look at how I'm going to get out. Now, didn't you mention too, there may be cases where it's going to take me, 6 months to get out.
Yeah.
But I can immediately stop accepting new patients in the plan.
That's correct. Or in 30 days. So as I said, they are as varied as people have ideas.
But now this is something, and of course, this is how the plan is going to kind of portray it.
Yeah.
So they found me in the book.
Yeah.
So I have one of those clauses, let's say.
Yeah.
I have within 30 days, I don't have to accept patients in with that fee schedule.
Correct.
So it's really, what are we doing here? We're agreeing to be in network, which means we're agreeing to a reduced fee schedule.
That's right.
So in 30 days, I don't have to do that anymore with people in this plan.
That's right.
The ones that I've already accepted, I have to honor this fee schedule for the next 6 months.
That's right.
Okay, so now they're going to tell everybody, right? As soon as I drop it, they're going to tell people I'm out.
Yes.
Right. So then 35 days from now, somebody comes in, because this could give you the idea that I'm just not going to accept this patient.
That's
Well, I
correct.
absolutely am. I'm just not going to accept them on that fee schedule.
That's
Which
right.
I know we're going to talk about that later,
Yeah.
but it's just kind of interesting how they work.
That's exactly right.
All right, so I've done that.
And
But
if
if you-
you're going to send letters or when you give your notice, I just want to the insurance company that you want to get out, just to mention one more thing.
Yeah.
Right, is make sure that your communication to the insurance company is received and you have confirmation of that.
Right. Yeah, good
So, certify your letters or register your letters, whatever you want
Something
to do.
where you can prove they got it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, good. So now we've reviewed our fee schedules. We've now reviewed our contracts. So now this is where it gets kind of interesting. We're not going to drop any yet. We've already got our new patient strategy going.
Yeah.
We've reviewed all our fee schedules and contracts.
Right.
The next thing we're going to do, we're actually going to do 3 things before we drop our first plan.
That's right.
Before we even select the first plan to drop.
That's right.
Okay. First thing we're going to do is massive reactivation.
Right.
Meaning we're going to go back into our patient base. Anybody who's been off schedule for their cleanings and things of that nature. We've talked about this in prior episodes.
That's right.
If you want, we have a reactivation program. I'll put a link on the episode webpage. You can download it, sort of a step-by-step to get people back in.
That's right.
But we're going to make a huge effort for that to get my patient base reactivated because I'm going to try and fill the ranks of those numbers we may lose, right?
That's right.
Okay, good. The next thing, and I love this, and I knew you have clients do this, we're going to drill our staff on this.
Yeah.
Now, I'll explain drilling and then you can tell them how they do it, right?
That's fine.
Drilling is sort of like role playing.
Yeah.
So let's say I'm trying to teach a receptionist how to answer the phone. I would do drills with the receptionist, meaning I'm a patient. They answer the phone. I see that they can do it without any flubs or mess ups.
Yeah.
And then maybe I give them a couple different scenarios to sort of break their concentration to see if they can stay on task.
That's right. You can make it progressively more difficult until they're comfortable handling anything that might come their way.
So now what am I going to drill my staff on here?
Well, patients are going to have questions, right? So let's take a look at what is different from you want to drill them on anything that's different than what they have right now. So your new patient. Phone calls. Do you accept my insurance? Yes, we do accept your insurance, right? Well, certain staff might say, no, we no longer accept your insurance.
Right, just because they're out of network, it doesn't mean they can't be a patient.
Right. Certain staff might say, if a new patient calls in and say, are you in network? The staff member might just say, no, we're not in network. Thank you very much, and hang up the phone, right?
You know what I'm wondering almost as I'm looking at this? If you mind me interjecting.
Yeah.
And we're kind of doing this on the fly as we go through this. Wouldn't it make sense if I'm going to drill the staff, right?
Yeah.
I probably want to figure out which plan I'm dropping first.
Yes, you do. Yeah. Well, you do or you don't. Either way, I mean, absolutely. It just needs to be done before you drop them.
Right. Well, ultimately, it sounds like they have to, because there's 2 things they need to understand, right? One, they have to understand. So I've just called the office. I had Aetna. And I just got a letter from Aetna saying that you're no longer in network. So can I be a patient in your practice anymore? So you want to make sure that when the staff member's answering the phone, they're not saying, yeah, we don't accept your insurance. You can't be a patient here anymore.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I was saying. They have to be comfortable with how do you handle those questions in a way that you want them handled as the business owner.
Right.
Right. So yes, of course we accept your insurance. How much coverage you have for your insurance, we don't know until we verify.
Right.
Your insurance, right? But we do have a new patient special right now. So either way, your insurance is going to cover that. So why don't we start with that? And if you need anything beyond that, we'll verify your benefits before we proceed with that.
Because in a lot of cases, the way the insurance companies are going to try to portray this is that they can no longer be a patient because obviously they want to keep because if a person comes to your practice and you've dropped their plan.
Right.
And now they're paying the regular fee and they're saying they're getting a horrible level of reimbursement.
Yes.
That looks bad to for the insurance company.
Absolutely.
Dr. Smith is charging $1,400 for a crown while he or she used to charge $800.
That's right.
So now, wait a minute, why is my insurance company only paying $800? Because they're trying to make it look no, Dr. Smith is money grubbing.
That's right.
When in fact, it's actually like they've been, ripping Dr. Smith off for years, the insurance company. I guess it's bad PR for them.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
It's interesting, isn't it?
It really is. And with a new patient, if you have a new patient special, it really makes zero difference whether they're using the new patient special is going to cover usually whatever they would have to pay out of pocket.
Right.
Right. So the important thing is that your receptionist is comfortable with getting that patient in front of you, because if the patient needs any significant work whatsoever, there's going to be out of pocket anyway.
Right.
And you're going to have to sell that patient the treatment that they need regardless.
So when we're drilling the team, we're going to have specific things we'll have to address as we're dropping specific plans. But generally what we want to, the reason we're doing this is so that if a patient calls in and has questions about what does it mean that you're out of network now or that you've dropped my plan, they can answer it in such a way that the patient still comes to the practice.
That's exactly right. You want and existing patients that show up now, right? With changes in their insurance, your staff needs to be drilled on how do you handle that properly.
Got it.
Or if patients call in, hey, I got a letter. Did you guys drop my insurance? They can handle that competently. So you want to role play that until the staff member feels comfortable and you are comfortable that it's handled exactly the way that you want to without upsetting patients unnecessarily.
Caught flat-footed.
That's exactly right.
All right, so we've drilled our staff. The next thing that we have here on our list is you want to put policy in place on what to do with these patients of record that you're retaining that are in the plan. So let's say, you're the dental office and I'm the patient, and we'll get into this in a little bit as far as patient notifications and things like this. But let's say you dropped my plan 3 months ago.
Yeah.
You're out.
Yeah.
And I'm coming in, I'm due for a cleaning in 3 months. You didn't reach me. I don't like to be confirmed on the phone. You just text me, and you sent a letter out of some kind, which we don't always recommend. We'll talk about that in a minute, right? And here I am, I show up.
Yes.
And then I get my cleaning and I don't realize anything's happening.
Right.
Until either maybe you talked to me before I go back. Maybe you didn't. Maybe you were busy and didn't have time.
That's right.
So now I walk up to the front, I get in front of your financial coordinator and I go, why is my cleaning twice as much as it was last time?
Right.
And let's say that, yes, you're out of network and that insurance company you're working with will not allow you to accept assignment.
That's right.
Like you dropped it because you're out of network, you can't accept assignment anymore.
Right.
So you're expecting me to pay the $306.
Right.
Whereas before I used to walk out paying $0.
That's right.
So now I go, wait a minute, my cleaning's twice as much.
Yeah.
And I have to pay all of it now.
Right.
What would you do in a case like that?
Well, that's an interesting scenario because there's really only a couple of insurance companies that would no longer send a check to you or let you accept assignment, right? Usually they will. So if they don't allow you to accept, and it's funny because I just had this scenario yesterday.
This is something they're going to want to figure out as they go through the contracts and drill the staff as well. But yeah, go ahead.
That's exactly right. So then you have to make a decision how you want to handle that. Do you want to say to the patient, well, I'm very sorry you didn't get our communication. We tried to get in touch with you, but this is how much it is, and we will have you reimbursed directly. That's one way of handling it, right? The other thing that you can do that I've seen other people do is this has been a patient of record for a few years. We know this patient. They've always been good about paying for their bills. There's no reason to believe that they wouldn't so do you want to wait 30 days before you get your money going? Okay, well, we're going to have the check sent to you, but then you're going to have to send it to us after you receive it.
So you'd let me, especially if I'm a patient of record of any length of time, you'd bill me essentially.
Yeah, but that's the call of the doctor, whether they want to do that or not. Right. And you might do that with existing patients that you have a track record with, that you really know and know that they are good for it, but not for new patients, obviously.
Right. And it was interesting. We had a client who's in Western Florida, right? We don't mention clients' names without their permission, although he'd probably be happy to let me mention his name. But he dropped all his plans.
Yeah.
And I think he lost 10% of the patients, he said. And what was great was, and it was funny, this is why you don't want anybody controlling your fees.
That's right.
This is why you don't want people controlling your fees. Because if I'm supposed to charge $800, or even if I'm just doing regular insurance to a degree, right? It gets weird if I start giving discounts because then what was my actual usual customary fee?
That's right.
Because, I'm saying it was $1,300 on the insurance form, but I really gave them some type of a discount, so it was $1,200. It's like I'm having to always answer to somebody in my own business.
That's right.
Other than answer, whatever. So I can go off on that.
I know.
So what he did was, you know about this, but this is for the people listening. He dropped his plans, and so we had a patient come in, and patient needed a crown, and he'd had crowns done before. The patient, and I think his PPO fee was $800, and his full fee was $1,400.
Yeah.
So he's presenting this to the patient. The patient goes, "Wow, it was $800 before." He goes, "Yeah, well, I dropped the insurance plan," and he explained why he dropped those insurance plans because they were lowering reimbursement, and it was a choice of, he has to pay his staff and this and that and quality of care, blah, blah, blah. So the patient still seemed a bit, oh, wow, that's a big change. So finally the doc said, and he's like, "Look, this isn't the way you should do it, but this is just to give you an idea how easy this is." He said, "What do you think is fair?"
Yeah.
The patient says, "I don't know, maybe $1,200. We said $1,200 or $1,300. He goes, "You know what? Fine. Pay $1,200.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Maybe, paid cash.
Yeah.
Well, not cash, credit card or whatever. And obviously it's not how we'd recommend doing this for everybody.
No.
But it was just what I loved about that story was it really painted the picture of a couple things.
Yeah.
One, it was he's getting $400 more than he was getting on the PPO.
That's right.
Okay. And He had the ability to make that call because he didn't have to answer to anybody. He is just a business owner having a transaction with with a customer, and he could charge whatever the heck he wants. Obviously, you want to have a fee schedule and you don't want to get into all kinds of weird discounts.
No.
But he had the freedom to do it.
Right. And I think that's what it all boils down to, because that's the joy of business ownership, is that you're supposed to have freedom.
Yeah.
Right. And this just totally hems you in.
Right.
Not just from what your fees are or how you sell and all the rules you have to follow, but also what your profit margin is going to be, because they can change that at will.
Well, and also they're telling the patients, that was not usual. Like they give the impression to your patients that you're overcharging because it wasn't UCR.
Yeah.
Right. So you're charging too much.
Yeah.
Like you're a thief of some kind.
Yeah.
They give patients the idea that you didn't need something because it was not approved.
Yeah.
Right. It's just ridiculous.
Well, people always accuse you of what they themselves do, right?
Exactly.
So there you go.
There you go. All right. So then, so what we're talking about here, the step we got off on is we're talking about is having a policy. So then in this case, we want to have a policy, you're saying, where if a patient comes in, they're in a PPO and they somehow didn't get their notification and they weren't comfortable with it, maybe we honor the PPO fee this one last time.
Yeah, you could. Again, it's entirely up to the what is real or the comfort level of the business owner. That's
Right.
up to the doctor how they want to handle
But
it. Either way works.
It has to be a way set up that, because they're not going to be the ones doing it in most
No.
cases. The front desk is going to be doing it.
Correct. But they do need to give guidance to the front desk or whoever's going to be handling that on how do they want each different scenario handled, and make sure that the staff is comfortable, like drilled
Right.
on handling those questions and handling those patients.
So I have policy and they're drilled on it.
That's correct.
Exactly. All right, so let's go on to the next step here. All right, so we get to our next step, step 9, which is now we want to sequence everything. We go back to that list we made.
Yeah.
All right, we have the list we're doing all these other things that we said before, and we have that list of, which companies we're dropping. Now, this is where the individualization comes in. Like all the steps up to this point really haven't affected your numbers, your patient numbers yet.
That's correct. We've just been doing the prep work, and the prep work is usually pretty uniform.
And that would help you no matter what's going on.
That's right.
Yeah, reactivation is going to help you no matter what you do.
Yeah.
But now we need to sequence how we're going to do it. And this is where, okay, if you're going to do this on your own, I definitely recommend that you get the PPO exit strategy session, because this is where, like I said, we will help you with this. Link on the episode webpage. You sign up for it. We'll help you. It's no charge. Okay, we'll tell you how to do it, and we'll also tell you what you need to do in order to make sure you do it and you're successful doing it. Obviously, it's very easy to do. You can just drop them all and end up, freaking out, or you could do it in a way that it's actually smooth.
Yeah.
But so now sequencing it, if you want to start, let's say 5% of your practice is some random PPO. You probably just drop it and not think twice.
That's right.
Or 10%.
Yeah.
Right? If 70 or 80% of your practice is PPO, you're going to want to do this over time.
Yeah.
And again, how aggressively you do it depends on how many new patients you're getting, how good you are at selling, all those things, right? And how many patients you have.
Yeah.
Right? But let's say you're looking at this and you're approaching it from the perspective of, you're a bit nervous how this is going to go and you want to start off easy. Well, there's a concept that, we'll have clients come in all the time, right? You see this and they're doing 50 a month and they go, well, my goal is to do 70.
Yeah.
You go, okay, well, you look at their practice. You go, they could be doing 150.
Yeah.
But you don't sit there and bang on them to do 150.
No.
You go, let's get you to 70.
Yeah.
Then they get to 70 and they sort of laugh about it and go, well, that was easy.
Yes.
I want to do 150.
That's right. It builds courage.
Right. They had a win.
Yeah.
So now if you're in that position, you go, this really makes me nervous. And it does not make you bad or anything. It's just, it's fine. This is your livelihood. This is your business. You don't want to mess this up.
Correct. And it's completely unknown.
Right. So if you want to have a win, we're going to start off easy.
Yeah.
So how do we start off easy? We're going to pick the PPO sort of that you have the least amount of involvement in, that has sort of the worst reimbursement.
Yeah.
Now, the problem is the PPO you might have the most involvement in, you may have the worst reimbursement.
Correct. But you would sequence that one later because of the amount. So you kind of have to weigh those two against each other.
But let's say I figured I had 2,000 patients.
Yeah.
And I have one with 100, another with 100, and one has pretty good reimbursement. I'm losing maybe 15, 20%. Another one I'm losing 35%.
Yeah.
Well, that's probably my target.
That's right. You're starting with that one.
I'm starting with the one I have 100 patients and I'm losing 35%.
Right. And very often when I look at these lists, there's a bunch of different insurances that we have. Like we have 30 patients,
Right.
we have 10, we have 40. And you add them all up, it's not even 100 patients. And this practice has more patients than they would ever be able to see in their hygiene slots.
Yes, they'd probably be better off dropping a couple at that point.
Yeah, just drop those. Just get those over with.
And they probably wouldn't even feel it.
That's exactly right. And the only modifying factor to that is if that has a reimbursement close to private fee. Then it's like there's no reason to get rid of it.
Because a PPO is essentially a marketing thing.
That's exactly right.
You're paying a marketing fee.
That's right.
So,
a very expensive marketing fee.
True. Even 10, 15% on every transaction is an expensive marketing fee. For a new patient, you're paying once.
That's right.
To get them in. For fee-for-service patients, you're not paying every time you see them.
That's right.
But okay, so we're going to say let's just, for our purposes here.
Yeah.
Let's say we have our smallest plans have 100 patients in them.
Yeah.
I know there are other ones that are smaller and so on.
Yeah.
They each have 100. One, I'm writing off 15%. One, I'm writing off 30.
Yeah.
Or 35.
Yeah.
So I'm taking the one with 100 patients that I'm writing off 35. That's target number one.
That's right.
So I'm going to whip that contract out, figure out how do I drop this thing, and I drop it.
That's right. Now, it is what you have to pay attention to is that list that we made on how long does it take to get out of this particular.
That's true. I forgot to mention that.
Yeah, get out of this particular PPO. So what you want to do is you want to sequence how you want to get out of these PPOs. Like first this one, then this one, then this one.
So you would do the whole list at this point.
Well, exactly, or at least get an idea of it because it's modified by how much time, how much notice do I have to give this insurance company so that you know by this time I need to give this insurance company notice. And so you might be giving an insurance company that you're going to drop like close to last, one of the first notifications.
Because it might be a 1 year horizon.
Because it might be a 1 year horizon.
All right, so let's just, I know I'm giving you kind of an unrealistic example, just because there's so many variables, which is, again, why we recommend talking to us.
That's right.
But let's say we go, okay, we got two. One's 15%, one's 35.
Yeah.
We picked, and we can drop within 30 days.
Yes.
This is in my imaginary dental practice.
That's right.
Yes. Just, you get the idea.
Yeah.
But I get your point. If it's going to be a year from now and it's going to be number 6, but I like your idea too of I'm taking this whole big old list. Let's say there's 17 companies.
Yeah.
I might just sequence them all out right now.
That's right.
That's 1, that's 2, that's 3, that's 4, that's 5. Then I feel like I have a long-term plan because when I drop number 17, I'm fee for service.
That's exactly right.
That also means you're not signing up for new ones.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Or when you drop them, get tucked into their umbrella plan, which has great reimbursement. Please don't do that.
You said great sarcastically.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because those great reimbursement, you're usually agreeing to take other insurance plans that have horrible reimbursement.
Why am I getting these HMO patients? Well, you didn't read the contract.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So just be careful. Now, what does happen, and this is worth mentioning, how much you get reimbursed for a PPO, it's a negotiation.
Yeah.
Right. And usually the horrible reimbursement rates that doctors get for PPOs is because it wasn't negotiated at all. Now, if I have 100 dentists in my immediate vicinity that take the exact same PPO that I'm taking, obviously that gives me very little negotiation power.
Sure.
Because the insurance company doesn't care. Right. Because there's 99 other providers in my immediate vicinity.
Sure.
But it does happen. And especially today with more and more people dropping PPOs, that there aren't that many providers in your area taking that particular PPO.
So then they'll come back at you with a better fee.
They'll come back at you with a fee close to your private fee. And
just tell them you didn't receive the letter. Can they send it again? You got lost in the mail. That's what I would do.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Right. But
or if they call your office, put them on hold for 19 minutes.
Correct.
And tell them to send a fax. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
So you in other words, the doctor has negotiation power that they didn't think they had or didn't know they had.
Sure.
Well, use that. If you don't want to drop the PPO necessarily and they're offering you private fee, which some of them will at that point.
If they're offering you your straight up private fee with no write-off, or maybe a 4 or 5% write-off.
Very little write-off.
Then stick with it.
Stick with it. Now it's worth it.
But how often is that actually going to happen?
It actually these days, happens more than you think because...
But what is that, like 10% of the time now? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Don't get your hopes up, folks.
No.
Especially if you're in New York City or LA.
Or dealing with Delta Dental.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
Rhymes with Delta.
Oh,
yeah.
What rhymes with Delta?
Delta. Anyway, so Okay, so we've made our list. I like the idea. If I've got those 17 companies, I sequence out how I'm going to drop them.
Yes.
Because then I have and I might even put dates, target dates.
That's exactly
Which, like,
right.
if you don't meet the target dates, fine. But the idea is that I have a day when we are going to just be having patients pay full fee, and I don't have to, not that it's all about money. That's not even about money. It's that I'm getting paid what I'm worth.
Yeah.
I'm able to pay my staff what they're worth.
Yeah.
I'm able to be profitable. I'm able to not care about the fee with relation to, how much my lab fee is and things of that nature. But I have a date that's going to happen.
Yes.
But now, obviously, on this list of the 17 companies I've got one that's number one.
That's right.
So now I take number one, because this is our step we're on now, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to drop that plan now.
That's
so I
right.
send in my notification. I follow the contract to the letter.
Yes.
And I drop that plan.
Yes.
So now this is where it gets interesting, because we get to step 10.
Yes.
Now I have to handle the patients.
That's right.
So if there's 100 patients,
Yes.
I could probably just call these folks, couldn't I?
Just call them and explain what's happening to them. Like, listen, you still have benefits, but there are changes in insurance companies, so we had to make a decision. Are we going to stick with that insurance company, or are we going to choose quality for our patients? We chose to go with quality. You still have benefits, but there are changes to that. We still accept your insurance.
Sure.
Right? But these are the changes.
Right.
So you do have to explain to the patients what's going on. If we're talking about 100 patients, just figure out how to call them.
Right. I know that one client I was mentioning earlier, they called when they confirmed.
That's
like,
right.
They did not make a big deal out of
No.
it. But nobody really cared.
No, and that's, I think, the biggest thing is we have, the doctor has in their mind that the patients are going to care so much.
Right.
Right? Well, 1 out of 5 patients is going to care so much, which makes it look like everybody cares so much. Right? That's not the case.
Now, let's say it's a bigger plan.
Yes.
Okay. And let's say, because we've seen this happen to clients,
Yes.
especially, and I'm not trying to hate on any particular company. I know, especially with Delta, because you mentioned with Delta, what ends up happening with Delta is a little bit of a specialized situation.
Yes.
In that, we say that you should lose up to 30% of the patients in that plan.
Yes.
Right. And as we mentioned earlier, in many cases, when we look at if you were to lose 30% of patients in most PPOs, how many new patients would you need to replace those patients to have the same level of productivity at full fee? In many cases, you would need no new patients.
That's correct.
That was the demonstration we did in that live stream we had, right?
That's right.
Just charging full fee, you make the same amount of money, right?
That's right.
But with Delta, that you're going to be pushing that higher percentage of loss normally.
That's right.
Because Delta gets proactive about this,
Yeah.
is my understanding.
Yeah.
So you drop Delta, they're coming at the patients right away going, hey, Dr. Sabri doesn't take your insurance anymore.
That's right.
You need to find another provider. Blah. Did they ever suggest that?
I have not
Actually, I
seen
don't
them
want to-
suggest that, but
they make it clear that you can't go, like you shouldn't go there anymore.
The way that these letters are worded create the impression with the patient that they no longer have insurance coverage.
Like at all.
At all with your practice.
Got it.
Right? Now,
But they
they're
don't
not
say that
saying
exactly.
that exactly. I said creates the impression.
Right. So we had one client this happened to.
Yeah, I had a client in the Northeast that this
and I
happened to.
loved what she did.
She was brilliant in the way that she handled it. So what she actually did is she sent out a postcard. So she didn't send a letter that people had to open. She sent a glossy postcard, and it had the colors of Delta on it.
And her practice.
And her practice, the colors of her practice on it. And on one side of the postcard, it says, "We accept Delta Dental."
Because they do, technically. They just don't
Absolutely.
agree to Delta Dental's fee schedule.
That's correct.
Right.
And then in the back, there was just a paragraph where she worded, and I love the way she worded it. And if you want a copy of it, just let me know because she gave me permission to hand it out.
Fair enough.
And I couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah, I'm not going to put it as a download. You should contact Sabri for that directly.
That's exactly
You can email
right.
her at Sabrib, S-A-B-R-I-B. I'll put Sabri's email on the episode webpage.
That's
How's
right.
that? Okay, good. Go
Yes,
ahead.
and I'd be happy to send you a copy of it because it was brilliant. But the way she worded it is that insurance company reforms can be confusing, right? And that they apologize for confusions like that, but they absolutely accept Delta Dental, right? It is true that the insurance companies forced the dentist to make a choice between reduced fees or quality care.
Okay.
Right. And when they were faced with that choice, they chose quality care for their patients. Right. Now, this does have some ramifications on their insurance benefits, but they still have insurance benefits with them, right? And then again, they apologize for that they understood like insurance company reforms can be confusing. So they essentially put it all back on Delta.
Now, how did that go over with the patient base?
Great.
That's true, because I know when she walked in, we're not mentioning names.
No.
She's more than tripled her. Like she was doing probably around 100 a month when she became a client.
That's right. She did 477 last month.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and with a nice profit margin.
Wow.
Right. So and obviously just one thing, if you have a lot of Delta patients, Delta seems to create the most confusion when you drop them because they no longer let you accept assignments.
Got it.
Which is different from most other. There are some other insurance companies that are now doing that.
That are not letting. Well, they're trying to keep people in the machine.
That's right. And they're starting to mimic what Delta did there, right? But Delta, if you have a significant amount of patients, like let's say I have 300 Delta patients and 300 patients in another insurance company, like Acme Insurance, right?
Okay.
And one lets me continue to accept assignment and Delta does not. Delta would always go last. Not because of the amount of patients that you lose, but because of the amount of confusion that it creates.
Because there's going to be confusion, there's going to be a lot of more work for your practice, for your staff, for your team, things of that nature.
That's right, which automatically puts Delta last, unless you only have, don't have that many Delta patients, or unless Delta's paying you like $650 for your crown, which means that essentially you're paying Delta to do their crowns for them.
All right, so if we were to put this as sort of a rule of thumb, obviously you have to do what's real to you, right? You're responsible for your practice. This is a podcast, right?
Yes.
You have to do what's real to you. But if we were to sort of look at a little bit of a rule of thumb based on what you're saying here, is generally if Delta comprises a large portion of your practice, unless the reimbursement is just pitiful in whatever Delta plans you're in, that would be the last PPO you're dropping.
That's correct.
Got it. Okay. Simple enough.
Yeah.
All right. So then we got back to as far as handling the patients. If you do run into any points of confusion, you weren't able to notify them, or if it becomes a big thing or whatever, honor the price one more time.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's how you handle the patients.
That's right.
That's a tried and true test that's worked every time.
That's right. And ultimately, you handle it on a gradient that you are comfortable with as long as you're handling it.
Right.
Right? It's if you are learning how to run a marathon and if you've never run before in your life, right? Obviously, you're going to move at a different pace than...
Sorry, I'm laughing. We had a team member years back. I don't know if you remember this. He was going to run a 10K.
Yeah.
And it was like a week before and he just started running.
That's right. I do
you remember him?
That.
It was funny. We were all laughing about it.
Anyway.
He was laughing about it too. But anyway, go ahead.
Anyway, the point I was trying to make is that, obviously if you've been running consistently, right, there is not as much prep work that you need to do. You can just run the marathon, right? But if you haven't, there's more work you need to do. But regardless of the amount of work involved in running the marathon, as long as you start, right, you have to start. The gradient that you start on is dependent upon the shape that you're in. Your mental outlook on all of that, right? But you need to start, and it takes courage to drop your PPOs because it's the way you've been practicing usually your entire career. And usually you've been practicing that way because you've been told, and it's branded in your brain with an atomic branding iron, that you will go bankrupt if you don't practice this way. And it's just simply not true.
It's actually the exact opposite.
Yeah.
All right. So then that was step 10, handling the patients. Now, step 11 and 12. Okay. So now the idea is I've dropped plan 1. Okay. So then, and it was successful. Then I just flip it around and I'm doing all these other things, steps 1 through 10. I then just go back to the beginning and drop plan 2, then drop plan 3 and so on until I'm out of plans.
That's right.
2 other things you're going to want to do as you're doing this. These are sort of steps 11 and 12. We'll mention these pretty quick. Number 1 is if I'm going to a supermarket where, I'm going to be getting a discount on food. And part of that discount is they're not going to have an employee bag my groceries, or I got to bring my own bag or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm expecting to pay a lower fee. So it all works out. If I go to Whole Foods, okay, and the food quality is not great and I'm expected to bag my own groceries, I'm going to find another comparable supermarket.
Correct.
Now, I say this because how often do I shop? I used to shop a lot more when we were younger. Anyway, but so you need to, if you're going to have a fee-for-service practice,
Yeah.
you need to raise your level of customer service
That's right.
to that level of expectation. If you're asking for $1,400 for a crown or $310 for a prophy visit,
Yeah.
you got to be worth that. Not just saying clinically, but people have to feel that. And it doesn't mean that you have to go buy a bunch of fancy stuff, right?
Yeah.
The office has to be clean, nice, smart, but also the staff have to be sharp.
Right. So now it's interesting that you mentioned this point, because if you go back to what we started talking about, that survey that was done, that 70% of the patients or the people in the United States, the customer experience is more important than the cost.
Right.
Right. If you are going to have a bad customer experience, you are going to have to cater to that 30% that is
Just cost.
concerned about cost. Cost-driven. But if you're going to eliminate the cost-driven patients from your practice, you are going to have to cater to the 70% that is interested in the customer or consumer experience, right? So you have to make sure that you live up to that, right? So it's a very good point that you bring up.
So that's, this is on our list. You brought that point up earlier
Right.
as well.
So the thing that I'm telling you is it goes a long way to acknowledge your patients when they walk in, to smile at them when they walk in, regardless of whether they're on the phone or not, to be friendly to your patients regardless, right? To be patient with your patients.
Not make them wait, don't run behind, all that kind of good stuff.
That's right.
Yeah.
Consider it time. So these are the things you're going to have to work out. If your schedule chronically runs behind schedule, you're going to have to fix that.
Got it. Okay, good.
Yeah.
And then the last point is you're going to have to learn how to sell.
Yep.
If you take a look at why doctors are in managed care in the first place, like why did you sign up for PPOs? Maybe you were thought that you would be locked out of the market if you weren't, and no one would pay, blah, blah, blah. But why did doctors end up in managed care in the first place? Because they don't know how to market and they don't know how to sell. So then you get some patient who comes in and they don't accept your full treatment plan and you think it's all the patient's fault. They just care about their insurance. They just care about costs. They have a low dental IQ or whatever. In 95% of the cases, it's absolutely not the case.
That's right.
It is a breakdown inside the office. They just didn't get it. They didn't understand why they needed the treatment.
That's right.
So this is something, again, if you're looking for quote unquote quality patients, yeah, sure, you do want people who care about their teeth. But what contributes to that quality is how well you communicate.
That's right. And you just said how well you communicate, which essentially is
And
to sell.
by you, I mean the doctor.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
So
right.
I have a link. If you really want to learn how to sell, I do recommend that you come to our communication and sales seminars. I'll leave a link to them on the episode webpage as well. That's really what this is all about. In the long term, this is how you maintain control over not just your income, but think about it. If a patient who needs 6 crowns accepts all 6, you're getting them healthy.
Yeah.
It's not you're not just doing what insurance covers.
That's right.
And eventually that won't even matter anymore, especially if you go fee for service.
That's right.
So there you go. So I think those are our 12 steps.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like we said in the beginning, if you want help as you go through this, and we do recommend that you get it because this is really, really difficult. That's part of the reason I think it took so long to do an episode like this.
That's right.
Is every situation's different. So if you want a PPO exit strategy session to get yourself up, sign up for it up in the episode webpage. You'll talk to someone like Sabri. You'll talk to someone like Chris or one of our other team members here who really know their stuff on this. We will help you figure out how to do this. It may seem scary. And even as you're going through it, there may be times where you're a bit, was this the right choice or whatever, but it always works out in the long run. I've never seen the clients that we have that get out of these things always look so stress-free.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. They're just so stress-free and they just love doing dentistry because they're just doing
they
dentistry.
get to be doctors.
Yep.
They now get to help their patients. What they can and cannot do for their patients is no longer dictated.
Which it shouldn't be, because that's why I don't want anybody dictating my treatment plan other than my doctor.
That's right.
Not what my coverage is.
That's right.
Yeah, it's what do I need?
That's exactly right.
Exactly. Okay, folks, Sabri, thank you so much for joining me this week. I had a blast.
Yes, me too.
Don't forget, guys, all the stuff we talked about is on the downloads page, right? You can sign up for the exit strategy session. We have that reactivation program on there. I think there are a few things we offer for download. I don't remember them all.
We'll go through it.
But definitely check it out. Yeah. Well, we'll definitely have them up there. I don't remember them off the top of my head here, right? If you want more info about MGE, you can find us online at mgeonline.com or call us at 800-640-1140. Other than that, that's all we have for you this week, folks. Have a great week. We'll see you at next week's episode.